Beholders are typically disgusting, conniving, grotesque monstrosities who haunt abandoned caverns and hoard unbelievable knowledge. But sometimes, they can be all that plus an ambitious crime lord. Such is the case of subverting expectations in Dungeons & Dragons, now seen in Magic the Gathering's latest set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Today, let's take a look at the long-standing and beloved Beholder from D&D's cast of characters getting their own card here in MTG. This is Xanathar, Guild Kingpin, a 5/6 legendary creature with the new subtype Beholder that calls players for generic and Dimir colors to play. At Mythic Rarity, it allows you to, at the beginning of your turn, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of their library at any time, and you may play the top card of their library, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. This card has a very similar effect to Send Triplets, from all the way back in Alara Reborn, but with some notable differences here. Xanathar only prevents your opponents from casting spells, and you can only play what's on the top of their library and not in their hand. Still, it's a really fun card that people will no doubtedly get a hoot out of, while also being pretty on point flavor-wise for this character. And now, my fellow adventurers, now that we've seen this card, let's learn about the lore of this Beholder. Who exactly is Xanathar, Guild Kingpin? As stated in the start of this video, Xanathar is a Beholder, a unique race made famous in Dungeons & Dragons' cult of fantastical creatures. As a Beholder, Xanathar takes on some attributes tied to his race, most of which come from being a big old floating monstrous head with eye stalks that shoot elemental lasers all over the place. Xanathar is also incredibly greedy, paranoid, and power-hungry, other traits familiar with the Beholders. It's also important to note that no Beholders are quite the same. Each will have different eye stalk affinities or attributes, and thus every individual believes that their permutation is the best the race has to offer. And this leads to a ton of bloated egos, which again plays out in Xanathar's story. Firstly, this particular Beholder is not actually named Xanathar. Not exactly. There was once a Beholder named Xanathar, but the most famous Beholder in D&D's 5th edition, who would later on assume that name, was simply referred to as the Eye. The Eye lived the typical life of a Beholder, spawning to a hive and eventually venturing out to gain more power and influence. This led the Eye to Skullport, a subterranean port city underneath the incredibly popular campaign destination of Waterdeep. Beholders very much like the cold, dampness, and lack of sunlight caves tend to offer, and so the Eye quickly took up shop. Skullport is known for its black market trading and all sorts of other nefarious activities. A Beholder is no strange sight down here, as power struggles and backstabbing are all the rage. Being a Beholder, the Eye saw all humanoid races as being lesser in his eye. And by the time he arrived at Skullport, he was already an accomplished slaver, well versed in the art of capturing, manipulating, and selling able-bodied humanoids off to the highest bidder. He took this trade to Skullport, and a new slave ring was founded. This criminal organization quickly grew strong and influential, now supported by an ever-expanding cabal of cutthroats and dirty actors, formerly known as the Agents of the Eye. But still, the Eye was growing bored at his station and wanted to expand ventures. So the Eye sat back and became more of a figurehead as his organization ran itself. Eventually, he started to spread rumors of his retirement or even his death, hoping to fall further and further into the shadows. For there was another target on his radar, another Beholder, one who controlled the largest thieves guild in all of Skullport, and even Waterdeep, a prize way too tempting to ignore. This rival Beholder, who the Eye believed was lesser than he, was actually named Xanathar. The Eye couldn't challenge Xanathar outright. He had grown too powerful even for his organization, so a more subtle eye stalk was needed. Luckily, the Eye had grown accustomed to manipulation in his trade. While playing dead or exiled, the Eye floated about, gathering secrets on Xanathar, any knowledge that would give him an advantage. Still, this wasn't enough, so as all Beholders do, the Eye got someone else to do his dirty work for him, spoken like a true slave master. The Eye goaded another ambitious Beholder found in the slums and back alleys of Skullport, a youngster, relatively speaking, named Uth, who he manipulated into having a territorial dispute with Xanathar. Uth and Xanathar would eventually settle their score with an epic confrontation to decide the fate of the Thieves Guild. But to the dismay of the Eye, Uth was defeated. Only this wasn't quite a setback. It actually was the desired result. Xanathar was simply far too powerful for the Eye to take on, and having another upstart nipping at his heels would have been problematic. This skillfully manipulated outcome was exactly what the Eye was looking for. With Uth dead and Xanathar weakened, the Eye hovered in, killed Xanathar, and usurped that beholder as leader of the largest syndicate guild in Skullport. To protect himself from claims of his troubled ascension, the Eye simply told the humanoid subjects that the Xanathar leadership was simply a title, not a name, and that the Xanathar title now belonged to him, giving him an air of legitimacy rather than simply being a murderer, which, of course, he was. But that's how the name Xanathar was tied to the most famous beholder within the 5th edition's lore. How the big-eyed daddy in the Forgotten Realms, leader of the most connected crime circuit in Deepwater, went from being known as just the Eye to becoming Xanathar. And that, you guys, is how we got a Xanathar Guild Kingpin card in Magic the Gathering's latest set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Now, eventually, this Xanathar, the Eye, would fall at the hands of various adventurers and ultimately betrayed by his Lich agent second-in-command, Avery Renee. Still, the title of Xanathar remained up for grabs, succeeding from beholder to beholder as time went on. So, Xanathar was really not an individual so much as it became a title for the strongest criminal beholder kingpin found in Skullport. And that's a great general idea of how to treat the lore and flavor of this card, and just like a good kingpin, knowing the secrets of your enemies, stealing them, and using it against them, well, that's just a perfect flavor win for Xanathar. Anyway guys, that's a preview and the lore for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, Xanathar Guild Kingpin. Let me know what you think about this card and its story in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to support this content by becoming a member on the channel here, leaving the video a like, and of course, subscribing. It all goes a long way in supporting the Ether Hub, you guys. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!